The snow in Chicago doesn't care who you are. It falls on the rich, it falls on the broken. And on a Tuesday morning in January, it fell on a man named Mike Callaway, once the most confident man in any room, now hunched on the corner of Michigan Avenue, holding a soggy cardboard sign that read, "Anything helps, lost everything." His suit jacket, the one he wore to close deals, to charm clients, and to dance with his wife at their anniversary dinner, was soaked through. His shoes, the Italian leather ones he'd bragged about at every company party, were splitting at the seams. A woman in a red coat walked past him without a glance. A teenage boy dropped a quarter near his foot without stopping. And Mike, this man who once had a joint bank account with $340,000 in it, reached down with trembling fingers and picked up that quarter like it was gold. He whispered something to nobody. "Please, I had a family."
Now, stop right there. You might be thinking, what kind of man falls that far in just 7 days? 7 days. Not 7 years, not 7 months, 7 days. And here's the part that'll make your jaw drop. Is the person who put him there? She was the last one he ever suspected.
Let's talk about Emily Callaway. Not the Emily at the end of this story. The one with fire in her eyes and ice in her chest. No, let's talk about the Emily at the beginning. The one who still believed in the life she was building. Emily Reeves Callaway was a night shift trauma nurse at Northwestern Memorial Hospital in Chicago, Illinois. She was the kind of woman who remembered her patients' names a week after they were discharged. She wore her dark hair in a tight bun for 12-hour shifts, kept a worn Bible in her locker, not out of performance but out of habit, and every single morning, before the world got loud, she sat at their kitchen table in their Evanston suburb home and drank 1 cup of black coffee in silence. That silence was the only peace she got, because everything else in Emily's life was noise. Her husband, Mike Callaway, was a mid-level sales manager at Hargrove Commercial Solutions. A decent company, a decent salary. On paper, they were the American dream, a 3-bedroom house with a garage they never used properly. A golden retriever named Biscuit who shed on everything. Barbecues every other Saturday where their neighbors Brenda and Clifford Marsh would bring over coleslaw that nobody really liked but everyone ate anyway. Mike was charming at those barbecues. Oh, he was good. The kind of man who slapped backs and told loud jokes and made everyone feel like the most important person in the room. He'd throw his arm around Emily's shoulder, kiss her temple, and say something like, "This woman right here works harder than all of us combined." And everyone would coo and smile. And Emily would smile too. But lately, the arm around her shoulder felt like a performance. The kiss on the temple felt like a habit. And the smile on Mike's face in their family photos, it never reached his eyes. Have you ever looked at someone you love and felt, not just thought but physically felt, that something was wrong? That the person standing in front of you was a shell wearing a face you used to know?
Where were you?
Emily felt it every time Mike came home from overtime. Every time his phone buzzed face down on the dinner table, he said, "Just work stuff, babe," without even checking it.
It's nothing.
Every time she reached for his hand under the covers, he was already asleep, or pretending to be. She told herself she was paranoid. She told herself stress did things to marriages. She told herself that 12-hour shifts and a demanding job could hollow a person out, make them distant, and make them quiet. She told herself a lot of things. But there's a difference between telling yourself something and believing it. Emily told, she never believed. It was the last Saturday of September, one of those Chicago autumn days that felt like a gift. Warm enough for short sleeves, cool enough for the trees to start turning gold. Brenda had brought her infamous coleslaw again. Clifford was running the grill with the kind of pride only a suburban man with a new apron understands. Mike's brother, Tom Callaway, showed up with a six-pack and his signature loud entrance. The kind of man who fills a room by volume alone. Big laugh. Big stories. Always had an opinion about the Bears. Always had a complaint about his job. And always had a way of making everything feel casual, comfortable, and safe. And then she arrived. Sarah Whitmore. Introduced as a family friend from high school. Tom's words, not Mike's. Mike just said, "Oh yeah, Sarah, good to see you." Like it was nothing. Like it was nothing. But Emily watched the way he straightened his collar when she walked through the gate, The way Tom nudged him with an elbow and grinned like they were 17 again, sharing a secret. Sarah was attractive in that effortless way that makes other women immediately uncomfortable. Not because of jealousy, but because of recognition. Something about the way she laughed too easily at things that weren't that funny. The way she touched Tom's arm, but kept her eyes on Mike. The way she found Emily in the crowd, smiled warmly, genuinely even, and said, "Mike talks about you all the time. You're everything he says you are." Emily smiled back, but her stomach dropped. Later at the drinks table, Emily refilled her lemonade next to Mike's business partner, Alex Drummond. Alex was quieter than most people at these things, tall, measured, and the kind of man who listened more than he talked. "Are you doing okay?" he asked, and the question was so direct that Emily almost spilled her drink. "Why does everyone keep asking me that?" she laughed, but it came out thinner than she intended. Alex looked at her, not through her, not past her, at her. "Because you look like someone who's been holding something heavy for a long time and hasn't told anyone." Emily opened her mouth to deflect, to say, "Fine, just tired. Long week, you know how it is." Instead, she said, "Sometimes I feel like I'm living in someone else's house." And Alex didn't rush to fix it, didn't offer a solution, just nodded slowly and said, "That's a hard thing to carry alone." It was 9 words. Emily thought about those 9 words for 3 weeks. It was a Wednesday night. Mike had just left for what he called a work conference in the Loop. He kissed her on the cheek, not the temple this time, the cheek, and rolled his carry-on out the door. Emily stood at the window and watched his taillights disappear. Then she walked to the laundry room to wash his forgotten dress shirts before the hamper overflowed, the way she always did, the way she always had. Because that's what you do when you love someone. You pick up after them, and you carry the small things so the big things don't collapse. She reached into the breast pocket of his navy blazer. Her fingers found a folded paper. A hotel receipt. The Grand Wailea Resort, Maui, Hawaii. Her name was not on it. The dates are this coming Friday through the following Thursday. 9 nights. The room rate is $890 per night. The total, $8,010, paid in advance. Emily's legs stopped working. She sat on the laundry room floor, just sat there on the cold tile, holding that piece of paper like it might change its words if she stared long enough. The dryer was running. The smell of fabric softener was everywhere. Biscuit padded in from the hallway, sniffed her knee, and lay down next to her like he already knew. She opened the joint bank app on her phone. The account that was supposed to have $340,000 in it. Their savings, her nursing years, his commissions, everything they'd built, showed $12,400. $12,400. Gone. $327,600. Gone. There were withdrawals going back 4 months, steady, calculated, invisible, small enough that she wouldn't notice if she wasn't looking, but now that she was looking, the pattern screamed at her from the screen. Transfers to a personal account she didn't recognize. Cash withdrawals from ATMs in neighborhoods she'd never been to. A wire transfer labeled simply travel. She didn't cry. Not yet. She just sat there on the cold laundry room floor, the dryer tumbling, the dog breathing at her knee, the receipt still in her hand. And then Mike's phone rang in the bedroom. He'd forgotten it. She walked in slowly, looked at the screen. "Tom is calling." She answered. She didn't say hello. She just held the phone to her ear and listened. Tom's voice came through, easy and casual. "Yo, you good? Sarah texted me and said you already paid for the upgrade to the ocean suite. Bro, you're wild. Emily's going to be working doubles all winter, and you're out here spending like a Kardashian." He laughed. "She's going to flip when she finds out, but hey, that's future Mike's problem, right?" Future Mike's problem. Emily's hand was shaking so hard the phone rattled. Tom knew. Tom knew. She thought about every backyard barbecue, every family Christmas, every time Tom had hugged her and called her sis, every beer they'd shared on the back porch while Mike was inside, pretending to help with the dishes. Tom, the brother-in-law she'd defended when her own mother said he was too loud and too much. The man who'd helped them move into this house, who'd held Biscuit when they first brought him home. He knew. She placed the phone face down on the bed, walked back to the laundry room, and sat on the floor again. And that's when she cried. Not the pretty kind, the ugly kind, the kind that shakes your whole ribcage and makes sounds you didn't know your body could produce. The kind of crying that happens when something you thought was real turns out to be a stage set. And someone just knocked the whole thing over. She cried until there was nothing left. And then she got up. There's a moment in every betrayed person's story where they stop being the victim and start being something else entirely. For Emily, that moment happened at 2:47 a.m. on a Wednesday night, sitting at the kitchen table with Mike's laptop. The password she'd seen him type 100 times without him knowing she'd noticed, open in front of her. She didn't look like a woman in pain anymore. She looked like a woman taking inventory. She opened his emails, his cloud storage, his shared calendar. She wasn't frantic, she wasn't shaking. Her coffee sat at her elbow and she sipped it methodically, the way she read patient charts, searching for the thing that explained everything else. What she found didn't just confirm the affair. It told a story. Sarah Whitmore wasn't just a high school sweetheart Mike had reconnected with at a reunion. She was a pattern, a habit. Someone Mike had been calling and texting and meeting in hotel lobbies for over 14 months. There were emails that read like a second marriage. "I've never felt understood like this," Mike had written. "She doesn't get me the way you do." She, Emily, reduced to a pronoun. But here's what stopped Emily cold, and I mean cold, the kind of cold that goes straight to the bone and stays there. In one of Mike's emails to Sarah, dated 4 months ago, he had written, "Tom's on board. He'll cover if Emily starts asking questions. We're good." Tom wasn't just aware. Tom was active. Emily closed the laptop. She stared at the wedding photo on the refrigerator, the one from 6 years ago, with her in a strapless ivory gown and Mike in a grey suit, both of them laughing at something the photographer had said. Tom was in that photo too, standing to Mike's left, grinning that big grin. She took the photo off the fridge, put it face down on the counter, and pulled out her phone to call Lisa Beaumont. Lisa Beaumont had been Emily's best friend since their sophomore year at DePaul University. They'd been through everything together. Bad apartments, worse boyfriends, licensing exams, Lisa's divorce, and Emily's wedding. If you looked up ride or die in any Chicago dictionary, Lisa's picture would be there. That's what Emily believed. They met the next morning at a coffee shop on Armitage Avenue. The kind of place that smelled like espresso and old wood, and the particular comfort of a city that keeps moving, regardless of your personal apocalypse. Emily told her everything. Lisa listened the way a good friend listens, leaning forward, eyes wide, reaching across the table to squeeze Emily's hands when her voice broke. She said the right things. "Oh my God, I can't believe this. That's disgusting. You deserve so much better." She said all the right things. But Emily would remember later, much later, that Lisa never once asked, "Are you sure?" Most people, when they hear something this shocking, ask that question. It's human instinct. Are you sure? Is there any chance you're misreading it? Lisa never asked. Because Lisa already knew. But Emily didn't know that yet. What Emily knew was that she was sitting across from her best friend in a coffee shop on Armitage Avenue with red eyes and a cracked chest, and she needed a plan, and Lisa was the only person she trusted. "I need to think," Emily said. "Mike leaves Friday. He thinks I don't know. And I want to keep it that way. Until I'm ready." Lisa nodded. "What are you going to do?" Emily wrapped both hands around her coffee mug and stared at the surface of the liquid. "I'm going to let him go," she said quietly, "and I'm going to burn everything down while he's gone." She also called Alex Drummond. She told him just enough, that she suspected Mike had been moving money and that she needed someone at the company who understood his accounts to help her understand what she was looking at. She didn't tell him about the affair. She didn't have to. Alex had been watching Mike's books for months, and he had questions of his own. "I've seen irregular transfers," Alex said carefully. "I flagged them internally twice. Nothing was done." Emily, a pause. "How much is gone?" "Most of it," she said. A long silence on the other end. "Tell me what you need," he said. And there it was again. That directness that cut through everything. Not fixing, not performing, Just tell me what you need. Emily exhaled for the first time in 18 hours. I need a few days, she said. Just keep things normal at the office until I'm ready. Done, Alex said. No questions, no caveats. She hung up and sat for a moment in the quiet of the kitchen. She thought about that barbecue, Alex at the drinks table. You look like someone who's been holding something heavy for a long time. She thought about how she'd brushed it off, how she'd been so busy protecting Mike's feelings that she'd never stopped to protect her own. She thought about a lot of things. And then she stood up, opened her laptop and got to work. Friday morning. Mike stood in the foyer with his luggage, dressed sharp, smelling like the cologne Emily had bought him for their 5th anniversary. He looked handsome. He always did. That was part of the cruelty of it. He looked like someone you could trust. Emily walked down the stairs in her robe, smiled. Have a good trip, she said. Mike kissed her, the cheek again. I'll call you when I land. Don't forget your charger, she said.
Have a good trip.
You always forget your charger.
Don't forget your charger.
He laughed, genuinely, warmly, the laugh of a man who had no idea the ground had already been removed beneath his feet. What would I do without you, he said. Emily kept smiling until the door closed. She stood in the foyer alone, listening to his car back out of the driveway. Biscuit sat at her feet, looking up at her like the loyal, simple, uncomplicated soul he was. She reached down and scratched his ear. Okay, buddy, she said softly. Here we go. By noon that same Friday, Emily had done 3 things. 1, she called the bank, reported unauthorized transfers from a joint account without spousal consent, and began the process of separating and freezing the remaining funds. Her voice cracked once when the bank representative asked how long she suspected this had been happening, but she steadied it and kept going. 2, she forwarded Alex's internal financial flags, with his knowledge, to Hargrove's compliance department, attaching the evidence she'd pulled from Mike's files. It wasn't just irregular transfers, it was a pattern of falsified client invoices that Mike had been running for nearly 2 years, pocketing commission on deals that were either inflated or fabricated entirely. 3, she started quietly reaching out to a name she'd found in Mike's emails, a woman named Deja Whitmore, Sarah's younger sister, who, based on the tone of one email Sarah had sent Mike 3 months prior, did not know her sister was in Hawaii with a married man and absolutely would want to know. Was Emily scared? Yes. Did she panic at least once? Also yes. She knocked over a glass of water on her laptop and spent 15 minutes convinced she'd destroyed everything, then cried for 20 minutes in the bathroom about absolutely nothing and everything at the same time. Did she push through anyway? You already know the answer. It was Sunday, 2 days after Mike's flight. Emily had barely slept, running on coffee and righteous fury, when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost let it go to voicemail. She answered. It was one of Sarah's ex-boyfriends,
Hello?
a man named Broderick Cole, who lived in Houston and had been burned by Sarah in a way that still made his voice tight with old anger. Emily had reached out to him through a mutual social media connection the night before. He talked for 40 minutes. He told Emily about Sarah's pattern. She'd done this before, targeted men in committed relationships, inserted herself as the understanding one, extracted what she could financially, and disappeared. He'd lost $18,000. Another man, a Chicago architect named Devlin Nash, had lost considerably more. He had documents, he had screenshots, he was willing to share all of it. Emily thanked him, hung up, then sat very still for a very long time. Because here was the thing. And this is the part that was going to keep her up for the rest of the night. Sarah wasn't just a woman Mike had fallen for. Sarah was running a play. And Mike, arrogant, careless, reckless Mike, had walked straight into it like he was the star of his own movie, not realizing he was a supporting character in someone else's con. Emily almost felt something like pity. Almost. She opened her contacts. She scrolled to Lisa's name. She started to type a message, just to check in, just to update her on everything, just because she needed to hear a familiar voice. And then she stopped. She went back to her email instead. Back to Mike's account. Back to the threads she'd been reading for days. Back to the beginning of the Sarah chain 14 months ago. The first message, the first response, the first hint that this had been building in the dark while Emily was working night shifts and buying groceries and walking biscuit at 6 a.m. and genuinely believing that her life was real. She read, and she found a name she hadn't expected. 3 messages into the original chain. 1 sentence, Mike writing to Sarah, "Lisa thinks you're exactly what I need right now. She says she's known it for a while. Lisa." Emily read it 3 times. "Lisa thinks you're exactly what I need right now." She set her phone down on the kitchen table. She stared at the wall. Outside, the Chicago wind moved through the maple tree in the front yard, the one she and Mike had planted their second year in the house. Its branches clicked together in the cold. The sound was small and sharp, like something breaking. Emily picked her phone back up. She texted Lisa, "Can you come over? I need to see you." Lisa's reply came back in under a minute. "Of course, on my way. You okay?" Emily stared at those words. She typed back, "I will be." And here, right here is where we pause. Because what happens when Lisa walks through that door is going to change every single thing you think you know about this story. What happens next is going to make you question who the real villain is. And what Emily does in the 7 days that follow, the real Emily, the one she'd been becoming quietly for months before any of this exploded, is going to leave you sitting with your mouth open, wondering how you ever thought she was just the victim. The snow hasn't started yet in Chicago, but it's coming. Lisa Beaumont arrived at Emily's front door at 8:14 p.m. on a Sunday night with a bottle of wine and a face full of practiced concern. She was wearing a camel coat, her natural hair freshly twisted, and the particular expression of a woman who has rehearsed her innocence so many times she started to believe it herself. Emily opened the door before she could knock. She didn't smile. She stepped back and let Lisa walk in. Lisa looked around the living room, the half-empty coffee mug on the table, Mike's jacket still draped over the armchair, and Biscuit asleep by the fireplace. She held up the wine bottle with a small, sympathetic smile. "I figured you could use this."
I figured you could use
"Put it on the
this.
counter," Emily
Put it on the
said.
counter.
Something in Emily's voice made Lisa pause, just for half a second, just a flicker, before she walked to the kitchen and set the bottle down. "How are you holding up?" Lisa asked, turning around. Emily was standing in the doorway between the hall and the kitchen, arms folded, completely still. The lamp behind her cast her face half in shadow and half in light, and Lisa would think about that image for a long time afterward. The way Emily looked in that moment, like 2 different people at once. "When did Mike first tell you about Sarah?" Emily asked. The room went completely quiet. Lisa's face moved through 4 expressions in 2 seconds. Surprise, calculation, a flash of something that might have been guilt, and then the one she landed on. Confusion. "What?" she said. "What are you talking about?" "Lisa," Emily's voice was flat, quiet, the kind of quiet that's louder than yelling. "I read the emails, all of them. I know Mike told Sarah that you thought she was exactly what he needed. I know you introduced them at that reunion 14 months ago. I know you've been covering for him every time I came to you worried, every time I said something felt wrong." She paused. "So I'm going to ask you one more time, and I need you to think carefully before you answer. When did this start?" Lisa opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again, and then crumbled. Not dramatically, not with tears and apologies and throwing herself at Emily's feet. Just crumbled quietly, the way a wall does when the foundation has been rotting for years and finally gives. She sat down at the kitchen table without being invited. "It wasn't—" She stopped, started again. "It wasn't supposed to go this far." "Go ahead," Emily said. She didn't sit down, she stayed standing in the doorway. "Mike came to me about a year and a half ago," Lisa said slowly, staring at the table. "He was unhappy. He said you two had grown apart, that you were always working, always tired, and that he felt invisible. And I know that's not fair to you. But he was my friend too, Emily. He's been my friend since college." "And Sarah?" "Sarah reached out to me through a mutual friend from the reunion planning committee. She asked about Mike, said they'd been close in high school, and she'd always wondered what happened to him." Lisa's voice was getting smaller. I thought I genuinely thought I was just reconnecting two old friends. I didn't know it would turn into... She gestured vaguely, meaning all of this. But then you found out, Emily said, and you kept covering. Lisa was quiet. How much did he offer you? Emily asked. The silence that followed was the loudest answer in the room. Lisa looked up. Her eyes were wet, but her voice was even. $5,000, wired 3 months ago. He said it was just to help me with my rent situation and... $5,000, Emily said it like she was reading it off a receipt. Cold, factual. You sold 12 years of friendship for $5,000. Emily. You sat across from me in that coffee shop 2 days ago. Emily's voice didn't rise. It dropped, lower. You held my hands. You said, I can't believe this. You looked me in the eye and performed grief for a situation you built. Lisa stood up. Emily, please. You need to leave my house. Please just let me explain. Lisa, Emily stepped back from the doorway and pointed toward the front door. I said what I said. Lisa grabbed her coat from the chair. She stopped in the hallway, one hand on the front door, and turned back. Her eyes were streaming now, genuinely, finally. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry, I never wanted you to get hurt. Emily looked at her for a long moment. You chose wrong, Emily said simply. And she closed the kitchen door between them. She heard the front door open and close. She heard Lisa's car start in the driveway. She heard it pull away. Then she walked to the sink, ran cold water over her wrists the way she did after long shifts when her hands needed to remember what calm felt like, and she stood there breathing for 60 full seconds.
Hey,
Then
Alex,
she dried
it's
her
me.
hands.
Had a long shift.
Picked up her phone, and called Alex Drummond. Alex picked up on the second ring. It's me, Emily said. Are you somewhere you can talk? Always, he said. And there it was again, that word, always.
Me, are you
Not sure, or give me a second, or what's up. Just always. Like she was never an interruption. Like her voice on the other end of his phone was a thing he'd been waiting for without knowing he was waiting for it. Emily sat on the kitchen floor. Her kitchen floor was getting a lot of use this week, with her back against the cabinet and Biscuit's warm head in her lap. She told Alex about Lisa. She told him about Broderick Cole in Houston and the pattern he'd described. She told him about Deja Whitmore, Sarah's sister, who had called her back that afternoon and spoken in a low, furious voice about her sister's history and confirmed everything Broderick had said and then some. Alex listened to all of it. When she finished, he said, Hargrove's compliance team called me this afternoon. They've been reviewing the files I forwarded. Emily, they're not just looking at irregular transfers, they're talking about termination and potential fraud referral. Emily closed her eyes. How long? If everything moves the way compliance wants it to. Mike could get an email by Wednesday. Wednesday, he'd still be in Hawaii. Okay, Emily said. A pause on the line. Then Alex said carefully, gently, how are you doing? Not the plan, you... Emily laughed, a short, tired sound that wasn't quite humor, but wasn't quite sadness either. I'm sitting on my kitchen floor at 9 o'clock on a Sunday night, and my dog is using my leg as a pillow. So? That's not nothing, Alex said. The dog trusts you. Dogs are good judges. She laughed again, this one more real. Alex, she paused, why are you helping me? A beat. Because someone should have been helping you a long time ago, he said, and I'm sorry it took this long. Emily sat with that for a moment. She thought about the barbecue, the drinks table. You looked like someone carrying something heavy. She thought about how long she'd been carrying it. Not weeks, not months, but years, and how she'd become so used to the weight that she'd stopped noticing it was crushing her. She didn't say any of that out loud. She just said, I'll talk to you tomorrow. I'll be here, Alex said. She hung up. Biscuit looked up at her with his big, uncomplicated brown eyes. Don't judge me, she told him. He wagged his tail once and put his head back down. 3,000 miles away, in an ocean suite at the Grand Wailea Resort in Maui, Mike Callaway was pouring his third glass of resort rosé and trying to ignore the feeling that something was wrong. He couldn't name it. It was the way Sarah had been on her phone more than usual. The way she laughed a little too loud at dinner, like someone performing enjoyment rather than feeling it. The way she'd suggested, very casually over breakfast that morning, that they check out the boutiques, and had been gone for 2 hours with the resort shopping bag and a credit card she'd borrowed from his wallet because mine's in the room, babe. I'll pay you back tonight. She'd paid him back with a smile that showed all her teeth. Mike told himself he was paranoid. He told himself he was the one who'd come here to feel alive again. He'd been dead inside his own life for so long. Or at least that's the story he'd been telling himself for 14 months, the story that justified every text, every hotel receipt, every transfer from the joint account. Emily was good. Emily was steady. But good and steady had started to feel like a ceiling pressing down on him, and Sarah felt like air. That's what he thought. That's how badly he'd misjudged everything. Monday night. Mike was on the resort balcony, watching the ocean go dark under a purple Hawaiian sky, when his card got declined at the room service terminal. He assumed it was a tech glitch. He called the front desk. The woman's voice was professionally neutral. "Sir, the card associated with your account is showing as frozen. Would you like to use an alternate method of payment?" Mike's stomach dropped. He tried the joint account card. Frozen. He tried his personal savings card, the one attached to the account he'd been quietly redirecting funds into for months. It processed. But when he opened the banking app and saw the balance that was supposed to have most of their life savings sitting in it, the number on the screen was a fraction of what it should have been. He sat down on the balcony floor. He called Emily. It went to voicemail. He called again. Voicemail? He texted, "Hey, can you call me? Something's going on with the accounts." He stared at the screen, waiting for the 3 dots that meant she was typing back. They never appeared. He went to bed telling himself it was a banking error. These things happen. He'd call the bank in the morning. Everything would be fine. He woke up at 5:47 a.m. to an empty bed. He sat up. The suite was quiet. Too quiet. He checked the bathroom, the closet, the balcony. Empty. Sarah's suitcase, gone. Her toiletries from the bathroom counter, gone. The resort safe where they'd been keeping extra cash and her passport was open and empty. On the pillow where she'd been sleeping, folded in half, was a single piece of the resort's cream-colored stationery. Mike picked it up. Read it. Read it again. "You were a good time, not a long time. Thanks for the ticket out. S." He stood in the middle of that $890 a night ocean suite in his wrinkled undershirt, holding a note that said he'd been used the way he'd used Emily, only faster and cleaner and without even the dignity of pretending it was love. And outside, the Pacific Ocean rolled on without caring at all. He called Tom. Tom answered on the 3rd ring, his voice still rough with sleep. "Bro, it's 6 in the morning." "She's gone," Mike said. "Sarah. She took everything out of the safe and left." A long pause. "Tom," Mike's voice cracked, "the accounts are frozen, both of them. Emily knows something. She won't answer. I need you to go over there. I need you to—" "Mike." Tom's voice was different now, quieter, flatter. "I can't." "What do you mean you can't?" "Tom, I need you." "I mean, I can't." A breath. "I called Emily 2 nights ago. I told her everything." The silence on the phone was so complete that Mike could hear the ocean from the balcony, and it sounded like it was mocking him. "You what?" "I told her about the accounts, the transfers. Sarah." Tom's voice was doing something complicated, guilt and relief tangled up together in a way that made him sound like a man who'd been underwater for a long time and just broke the surface. "I've been covering for you for 14 months, Mike. 14 months of lying to a woman who's been nothing but good to our whole family. And then she called me. She called me just to ask if I was okay, 2 days after she found out everything, just checking on me. And I couldn't do it anymore. You betrayed me. I failed her." Tom's voice went up and then came back down, tight and raw. "I failed her, Mike. She's my sister-in-law. She came to family dinners and learned Mum's recipes and sat with me at the hospital when I had my appendix out, and I lied to her face for over a year so you could run around with a woman who just robbed you blind in Hawaii." Silence. And Mike, Tom stopped. What? Mike's voice was hollow. Another pause, longer, the kind of pause that contains something the person speaking isn't sure they should say, and then says anyway because the weight of it is too much. Sarah and I, Tom started, stopped again. Before she went to Hawaii with you, she came to me first. The ocean outside the balcony kept rolling. She came to you. She played us both, Tom said. His voice was completely flat now, ashamed and flat. I gave her $3,000 2 months ago. She said it was to help you cover tracks. She said she needed it for a flight. I thought I was helping you. He paused. I think she's been working both sides the whole time. Mike sat down on the edge of the bed. He sat there for a very long time. So let me make sure I understand, Mike said finally. His voice was barely above a whisper. I emptied my marriage to fund a woman who was also running you, my brother, at the same time. Tom didn't answer, because there was no answer to that. There was only the sound of the ocean, 3,000 miles from home, in a suite Mike couldn't afford anymore, in a life that had been dismantled so quietly and so completely that he hadn't noticed until there was nothing left to stand on. And here's where we pause for just a second, just 1 second, to ask you something. Where in your life have you been so busy chasing something shiny that you didn't notice someone was quietly removing the foundation? Because this isn't just Mike's story. This is everybody's story. The job you stayed loyal to restructured you out without a second thought. The friend you defended publicly who talked about you privately. The relationship you poured everything into while they were already halfway out the door. We've all been Mike in some version of this. The difference is, not all of us have an Emily waiting on the other end. Keep watching. Wednesday. Back in Chicago, Wednesday arrived cold and sharp. Emily was at the hospital for a morning shift when Alex called. Compliance sent the email, he said. She stepped into the stairwell so she could hear clearly. They've terminated Mike's employment effective immediately, Alex continued. They're also forwarding the invoice discrepancy findings to their legal team for review. Emily, he's going to need a lawyer. She leaned against the concrete wall of the stairwell, her scrubs still on, her hospital ID swinging from her chest. A week ago, she would have been destroyed by this information. The idea of Mike losing his job would have sent her spiraling into guilt. Did I do the right thing? Was it too far? Should I have given him a chance to explain? She felt none of that. She felt the cold of the concrete wall through her scrub top. She felt the particular exhaustion of a person who has been awake in every sense of the word, emotionally, mentally, strategically, for 6 straight days. She felt something that was close to finished. Okay, she said. How are you holding up? Alex asked. I have 4 more hours on my shift, she said. I'll call you tonight. I'll be here, he said. She went back to work. Day 7. Mike Callaway landed back at O'Hare Airport on a Thursday afternoon with 1 carry-on bag, a credit card with $340 left on it, and the particular expression of a man who has been in a car crash he caused himself and is only now starting to understand the damage. He took a rideshare to the house. The lock code didn't work. He rang the bell, knocked, called Emily's phone, which rang once and went to voicemail with a new outgoing
Emily,
message he didn't recognize.
Emily, pick up, please.
Cool,
Please leave
professional,
a message.
and
This
her
isn't
voice
her.
without the warmth it used to carry when she knew it was him calling. He sat on the front steps for 45 minutes. A neighbor, Clifford Marsh, who had eaten bad coleslaw at their barbecue and clapped Mike on the back
Clifford.
dozens of times,
Tom, it's
walked
Mike.
by with his
Call me
dog.
back.
He looked at Mike on the steps, looked away,
Hey, Clifford.
walked faster.
Tom, it's Mike.
Mike
Call me
called
back.
Tom. Tom didn't answer. He called his company phone. A number he didn't recognize picked up and explained, very politely, that his employment had been terminated and that any further contact should be directed to Hargrove's legal department. He checked his email on his phone. The termination notice was sitting at the top of his inbox. Below it, an email from a law firm he'd never heard of, sent on behalf of one Emily Reeves Callaway, outlining the beginning of divorce proceedings and a formal accounting request for the joint assets. Below that, an email from the building management company for the condo Tom co-owned, copied to Mike as a courtesy, noting that Tom had informed them he would be vacating and requesting that Mike not use the property as a forwarding address. His own brother. Mike sat on those front steps until the sky went the color of old pewter and the first flakes of Chicago snow began to fall, slow and indifferent, the way Chicago snow always comes, like the city owes you nothing and has always known it. He had $340 on a credit card. He had one carry-on bag. He had a phone whose battery was at 11%. And somewhere in the distance, the Michigan Avenue sidewalk was about to get a new addition. A man in splitting Italian leather shoes and a soaked blazer, holding a cardboard sign in handwriting that shook because his hands hadn't stopped shaking since Hawaii. Anything helps. Lost everything. It was a Tuesday, 8 days after Mike had left for Hawaii, thinking he was the smartest man in the room. Emily was walking down Michigan Avenue after a morning appointment with her new therapist, a woman named Dr. Portia Green, who had an office on the 14th floor and a gift for asking the exact question you didn't want to answer. She was wearing a dark wool coat, her hair was down. She looked to anyone walking past her on that street like a woman with somewhere to be and the energy to get there. She almost missed him. He was on the corner between a closed storefront and a coffee cart, sitting on an overturned milk crate with the cardboard sign across his knees. His head was down. His shoulders were up around his ears, the way a person's shoulders go when they've been cold for so long they've forgotten what warm feels like. Emily stopped. She stood 10 feet away from him and looked at this man. This man she had married, had believed in, had worked doubles to support, had walked the dog with at 6 a.m. and made coffee for, and defended to her mother, who always had reservations, and built 6 years of a life with, and she felt something. Not pity, not satisfaction, not anger. Something quieter than all of those. Something that felt like standing at the end of a very long road and finally being able to see how far you'd come. She reached into her coat pocket. She had $1, 2 quarters, and a single coin, an old one, the kind with worn edges you find at the bottom of a bag and don't know how long it's been there. She walked forward. Her footsteps on the concrete were quiet in the snow-muffled air. Mike heard them anyway. He looked up. Their eyes met. And in that moment, that single suspended cinematic moment on a Michigan Avenue sidewalk with snow falling around them like the city was trying to soften what was happening, Mike saw everything. He saw the woman he'd had and hadn't valued. He saw the plan she'd built while he was building nothing. He saw the calm on her face, not coldness, not triumph, just calm. The calm of a person who had walked through the worst version of their own story and come out the other side changed in ways that could never be undone. And he understood, finally, completely, and far too late, that Emily Callaway had never been the supporting character in her own life. She had been the architect. The whole time. She held the coin out, dropped it at his feet, didn't say a word, turned and walked away without looking back. The coin hit the sidewalk and spun in that way small metal things spin when they land on concrete, a brief, bright, ringing sound. And then it settled. And Mike watched her walk away, the back of her dark coat disappearing into the crowd, the snow falling on both of them equally because snow has never cared who was right. And he understood that the coin wasn't cruelty. It wasn't revenge. It was a period at the end of a sentence. It said, I see you. I pitied you once. I built something while you were burning ours down. And now we're done. 3 months later, Emily Reeves, she'd gone back to her name, quietly and without announcement, was sitting at a new kitchen table in a new apartment in Lincoln Park, smaller than the house, a balcony where she kept a plant that was somehow surviving the Chicago winter, Biscuit asleep on a new rug. She'd picked up a second volunteer shift at the free clinic on Wednesdays. She was sleeping through the night again, not every night, but most of them. She still had the wedding photo. She kept it in a drawer, not face down anymore, not displayed, just there, because some things don't need to be destroyed to be put away. She was having coffee with Alex on a Friday evening, not performing anything, Not being strategic about anything, just two people who'd been honest with each other in rooms where honesty cost something and had somehow ended up here on a Friday evening with coffee and the low hum of a city that didn't stop moving for anyone. Alex said something that made her laugh, a real one, the full kind. And for just a moment, Emily Reeves sat in the warm light of her new apartment and let herself feel exactly where she was. Not fine, not healed, not finished, because people don't work that way. Life doesn't work that way, and betrayal leaves marks that show up in unexpected places for longer than anyone tells you. But here, present, building, choosing, here. Somewhere in Chicago, a woman named Sarah Whitmore had resurfaced. A text to Deja's number, a social media account that had gone private and then public again. Small signals that suggested she was already moving on to the next thing, the next city. The next person who thought he'd found someone who finally understood him. Tom Callaway was in therapy. He'd called Emily twice. She hadn't answered yet. She wasn't sure she would. And Mike? Well, Mike was somewhere doing the long, hard, unglamorous work of figuring out who you are when everything you thought defined you has been stripped away, and all that's left is the choices you made to get there. That's not a story Emily needed to follow anymore. She had her own story now. And this, right here, right now, was just the beginning of it. The final word to you. Here's what this story was actually about. It wasn't about revenge. It was about clarity. The moment you stop explaining yourself to people who've already decided who you are. The moment you stop carrying weight for people who never offered to take any of it. The moment you stop shrinking so that someone else can feel big. Emily didn't win because she outsmarted Mike. She won because she finally stopped losing herself trying to keep him comfortable. And that's a story as old as betrayal itself. You know someone going through this right now. Maybe it's a friend. Maybe it's a family member. Maybe, if you're being honest with yourself at midnight when nobody's watching, maybe it's you. If it is, drop a comment. Just write, "I see Emily in me." You don't have to explain. You don't have to tell the whole story. Just let yourself be seen for 1 second. Because the Emily in you, the one who's been quiet and steady and carrying too much for too long, that version of you, she's not done. Not even close. The end. Written for the ones who stayed quiet too long and are finally ready to be loud.